We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
Damn, who knew? All the planes we flew, good things we've been through.
Hi, I'm Millionaire Young. Should you buy a house or should you buy a car? That's the question. I guess a lot of people throughout their life at some stage probably ask themselves, and something that I used to ask myself, and I guess it would be something worth talking about. Now, yesterday I actually stumbled across an interview with a guy called Lethal B. For anyone that doesn't know, he's actually a successful musician, sort of come from the urban world, and he's sort of saying that, I think the topic was like millionaire or something like that, and he was just saying that he purchased a Lamborghini recently, and basically he bought it cash, and he would recommend anyone, if they did have the cash, to buy cars outright rather than leasing them, which I thought was something that I'd like to tackle and challenge. But I do understand why sometimes people think that. I mean, as an investor myself and being around some wealthy people, they sort of sat me down and sort of changed my concept about that sort of belief, and sort of made me realise that putting large lumps of money down for a car probably not a good idea. So I'm just going to basically give some pros, cons, or a bit of a breakdown of some of my experience, and that might help you make a better decision basically with whatever you're doing. So I mean, obviously not everyone's going out tomorrow to buy a Lamborghini, but let's just talk about the concept. You might be going out to buy a brand new Punto, you might be going out to buy whatever, Hyundai, Mercedes, BMW, whatever it is irrelevant really. I'm just going to kind of get to the concept. Obviously if you're buying, you know, a few £100 car or a couple of £1,000, then, you know, that doesn't really matter what you do. But if we're putting down large sums, or talking about larger sums of money, then I'm just going to give you something to think about. So you're thinking about buying a house, i.e. an investment, whatever, or versus a car. Should you buy a car? Now, let's just assume, because I guess the average sort of person starts considering it or weighing it up when they start looking at cars, maybe around 20-30,000. Let's just say the average. Not everyone's going to be buying Lamborghinis or Rolls Royces, but let's just talk about, you know, something more moderate basically. So let's just say this person, being whoever, has £30,000 and they're thinking, okay, maybe I should buy a car outright. Now, let me just weigh up some of or break down the scenario of what the reality would be. So let's just say you had a time period here at the bottom. So the time was 3 years. Let's look at it over sort of 3 years. I'll make the video quite short and try and simplify it as much as I can, not make it too complicated. But anyway, 3 years, so that's like sort of like the beginning, that's year 1, that's year 2, that's year 3. So if you spend £30,000 on a car, everybody knows when you buy a car, well, most cars, if they're sort of a year old or whatever, they're going to depreciate in value, because unless it's a classic or whatever, that's what cars do. So let's just assume that after 3 years it's worth how much? I don't know, 20,000 after 3 years. So it's been dropping sort of like just over £3,000 a year, and it's now worth 20. So after your 3-year investment of £30,000 into a car, you've been driving around, feeling good about yourself obviously, but after 3 years, I mean, most people like to look at a new car after 3-5 years or whatever. Some people like to do it every year, but your 30,000 is now turned to 20,000 after that period. Like I said, I'm going to make it quite brief. I could make it quite complicated, but I'm going to make it just a simple version for the average Joe to sort of get his head around. So that's the reality of that sort of situation. Now, if we're basically buying a property now, I mean, I've been in these shoes, so I kind of I've sort of been through the experience myself. But if let's just say we're talking about a £30,000 figure, like I said, that might be 10,000 for your situation. It might be 100,000. You might be buying a Ferrari. It doesn't really matter. 30,000. Now, if you put that into a property, can you buy a property outright for 30,000? Well, I'm not up in Liverpool or nothing like that. I'm down in London, and that ain't really going to go too far in terms of buying your property down here. Can it put down can it basically be a deposit to buy a property? Definitely, especially if you're looking, you know, just around the M25 or whatever. You can definitely put that down on a property. So let's just say you put 30,000 down on a property as a deposit, and the bank leverage you some more money. So let's just say I don't know, you bought a property for 100,000, and let's just say, like I said, I'm going to make it basic. I do a lot of more complicated things, but I'm just going to do a basic version now, just so average person can understand. If you buy a property worth 100,000, yeah, and that same 30,000, remember, you might be trying to decide which what to invest in. Personally, I wanted both. You know, I wanted a car and I wanted a property. So I thought, what logical way could I do this and make money work smart for myself? Because if you put all your money into a car, a lump sum, generally that's because you don't want the interest payments every month. So you deem it a bit more safe. But really, once you've got some smarter knowledge and some better investing tips in how to invest and make money work smart, then you start to look at everything in a whole new different light. So 100,000 now. If you basically purchase that for 100,000, you put down 30, yeah. So your money is now tied up in that property. How could you basically get the car as well? Well, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to assume that we sort of rent that property out. So remember, we're still talking about the same 3-year period. So with the car, you start with 30 and you end up with 20. With a property, you start with 30, put in 30 to the property. Now, is that property going to go, the car went down to 20,000. Now, your property, when you invest in a property over time, generally, not all the time, but generally, we're looking for investments to go up in value over that period. So typically, what might that be worth? Now, obviously, this is kind of a grey area and grey sort of question really, because I guess depending on where you invest around the country, you can have different yields and higher capital growth. But let's just say on average, that 30, let's just say it went up to at least, 40? What would be quite safe to say? I'd say at least, the property was 100,000 and now it's worth, after 3 years it's worth, I'd say at least, 115, 120 at least. So basically, after this period, you've made £20,000. So your 30 is now turned to 50. Because you owe the bank 100, you bought for 100, now it's worth 120. Well, you got 30 in there, so that means after that period, you're now left with an investment of 50k equity. Also, now, how do you get the car as well? Because you might say, well, I don't want to go 3 years without having the car. So what we do is we rent this property out for, let's just say we rent it out for 700, but the mortgage payments, that's the rent. The mortgage payments, because obviously you've got a mortgage on that, let's just say they're 70 grand you're borrowing, let's just say they're 350 or 300, whatever. So that 350, that's per month. So that means you're left with, each month, 350 cash flow. So that's what you're left with. So investing in a property, after that 3-year period, rather than losing £10,000 and having no investment, you're now in a position where you have put in 30. After that 3-year period, it's gone up. It's gone up to 120. So you've made £20,000 basically in equity, plus you've been making £350 a month. Now, what I'm going to say is, rather than putting the 30,000 into that and having 20 at the end, you've put 30,000 into the property, taken out a mortgage, rented the property out, and used the cash flow, i.e. the money that's left after your mortgage and bills, 350, you use that to get this on finance. So the question is, how much your monthly payment's going to be to get the car? Well, does it really matter? Because at the end of the day, you're basically financing the car, and you're paying $350 a month, which is interest, which is coming out of your property. So if that makes any sense to you, I know it's a little bit messy, but the bottom line is you've invested in a property that's going up in value all the time, yeah, which is basically offsetting against the money that the car is losing. So the car, even though if you take out the car on finance, the car's going down in value, but the property is going up at the same time. So you're in a position where you've got an asset going up, the car going down, but it's offsetting it. You're offsetting it with the rent that you're receiving every single month. I know that might be a bit complicated for some people trying to get their head around it. I know I've done it kind of like a little bit messy. This is like a really basic version. We could sort of go into maybe, you know, HMO and things, looking for below market values and then refinancing and taking the money out and all that sort of stuff. But I'm just giving you a basic summary there. And like I said, the interest payments, if you've got £100,000 and you're looking to buy a Ferrari, then rather than putting 100 grand all into a Ferrari, we might find an investment where we can get a high yield in, which would cover the interest payments on the Ferrari every month. So it doesn't really matter what car it is. The concept is something that is worth getting your head around, and basically sort of making your decision.
Friendship turn to a bond, and that bond will never be broken. The love will never get lost. And when brotherhood come first, then the line will never be crossed. Established it on our own when that line had to be drawn, and that line is what we reach. So remember me when I'm gone.